Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets grab a 116-115 comeback victory over the Hornets in the Emirates Cup group stage. We'll tell you how Cam Johnson and a little bit of extra help off the bench led the Nets to victory. All coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA and get $50 off instantly when you play a $5 bet. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Just like, Doug, the Brooklyn Nets ran their game. Took a little bit of time with no Cam Thomas to sort things out, but they come back from a deficit of 1.17 down in this one to win at home against the Hornets.
Yeah, Cam Thomas ruled out late. He gets a questionable tag with a back tightness really late, which is almost always a sign that someone's going to be out. I mean, it's like 15 minutes before game time, 30 minutes before game time. When you get downgraded to questionable at that point, if you follow injury tags, like, you know that usually means something no good is up. So they go into the game without him and looked, I mean, honestly, early on looked like they really missed him and they couldn't score at all. The things we're always afraid about when they're going to lose certain guys from this team is that, specifically Cam, is that there's just not going to be able to score. And then by the time it's all over, they have 116 points, make a furious comeback. After just being down a lot, and put up together a really nice win in group play, 1-1 in group play for the NBA Cup. So overall, like, a pretty fun game. This is the kind of stuff that it kind of thematically follows the things that we've been saying all season about this team, which is that they fight hard. They never give up. They're in basically every game. They punch above their weight. And even against a 5-8, now 5-9 Hornets team, like, I still put this down as a good quality win. It's why this team's really fun to root for.
Yeah, of course. And I think, like, we talked about this last year when they were introducing the NBA Cup. These games have a little bit more juice. Like, there was definitely a handful of plays we'll talk about later that even Ben Simmons was a part of in terms of getting the team a little bit fired up. But without Cam Thomas, you need to look to somebody who's going to pick up the slack. And 34 points from Cam Johnson at times can feel surprising. But this season, he's looked far more like the all-around offensive player that we talked about him potentially growing into when he came over in the Phoenix trade. The 34 points, 6 of 12 from beyond the arc. That's a massive part of the story. But he was 11 of 20 overall, got to the line 6 times, knocked those down, and gave you 5 rebounds and 4 assists to go along with it, plus a couple of blocks on the defensive end. Like, from a veteran leadership standpoint, probably one of the only guys that could, in the absence of Cam Thomas, actually step up from a scoring standpoint because he has the ability to do it. There's not a lot of other options outside of maybe Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, it takes 20 shots, easily the high on the team, and you love to see that, right? Because they were definitely going to need a guy whose usage was going to need to kind of climb here a little bit with Cam Thomas out of the lineup. 11 for 20 from the field, 6 for 12 from 3, 6 for 6 from the line, which is a nice sign too, because he's aggressive. He's been aggressive on closeouts. Did take a few mid-range jumpers, which aren't statistically ideal, but every once in a while you need to be, analytically ideal. But every once in a while you're going to need to take them just to sort of press the defense. And, a joke during the game, but it's probably true. This is the best case scenario for the Nets right here with Cam Johnson, because the idea is they probably have to trade him, right? And they needed him to A, stay healthy, and B, kind of play like this to be able to extract any like real, upside value on draft picks or a young player or something like that. And I think if he's going to keep playing like this is like the dream situation for the Nets. It's like the contract's not terrible. So even if you kept him around, it's not ideal, but if, as a veteran trying to help young players, like, it's not the worst thing in the world. You have to spend the money anyway, right? Like, it's hard to envision the Nets like really truly bottoming out into like this like epic, terrible tank now with the way they're constructed. And at the same time, if he's just going to be a guy shooting 40% from 3, which is almost at, right? 92% from the line. He's 48, 39, 92 right now, his splits on the season at 18 points a game. Like, that's awesome. That's awesome. Like, that's what everyone's like, everyone wished Mikhail gave us that, right? Like, for those years, and he's kind of just doing it.
Yeah, there's that thing where this is, you flash back to last season when, okay, you need someone to give you a lift. It was always look to Mikal Bridges first. Maybe it should have been looking to Cameron Johnson, who you just mentioned there, the 18 points per game. That's a career high right now. He's averaging through 15 games, averaging over 33 minutes a game. That's a career high right now. Career high percentage from the field overall in terms of his shot selection. And he's taking close to, actually, no, yeah, narrowly his career high as well in terms of attempts per game. And you would expect that because of the players that you don't have on this roster from an offensive standpoint. But we talked about to the start of the season, the critical players. Dennis Schroeder, obviously, take him away. Cam Thomas, even including this game, still, you saw how much of a struggle it was early. Cam Johnson, I know we've talked a lot about him and Jalen Wilson maybe being those swappable pieces if you make the trade of Cam Johnson. But there's still something to be said for how long he's been in the league and the confidence that, oh, okay, he can step into this larger role. It's no knock on a Jalen Wilson or a Trendon Watford that we'll talk about, but there's some knowledge in the chamber here for Cameron Johnson to rely on, where we've seen instances with some of the young players, Wilson included, where he gets a little bit bit, especially going in towards the basket. So it was a really great performance from Johnson, excuse me. One, we were not going to get a win for the Nets in this game otherwise. So 34 points for him. Coming back here in a second, we're going to talk about where we stand on a few other performances. But do you want to touch on Ben Simmons and where he was coming out of this game without going a mile deep?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know we're going to talk about some of these other guys here. Just a quick note on Simmons. I do think that, without belaboring this point, because we talked about this a ton.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
he plays 26 minutes in this game. The whole thing with him, is if he just takes shots, like if he just shoots, then you press the defense into a little bit more on their back heels. And again, I don't want to go crazy on this because we just have too much evidence where it just doesn't happen. And I don't know if it was like Cam Thomas being out. I don't know if he just had a nice runway for a couple shots here, where he's able to get the basket where it's like so obvious that he wasn't going to be able to pass. Like he has a running dunk. He has the putback layup. Like some of these just weren't designed shots. But the whole thing is for him, if he can just get eight shots a game at 26 minutes, I think everyone would take that. Like, you know what I mean? And I just don't. And that's how you get a 10-9-5 line in 26 minutes on a plus 14, right? Is that you just are able to do this stuff, got super chippy at times. Again, I don't want to just future cast that this is the new him, because I just think we have too many examples where it's just not. But if he's going to be able to screen set like this, if he's going to try to get to the rim, if he's going to just be a little bit more aggressive, they just have a chance to just see another version of him. But it's just too often. It's too often it just doesn't happen. But that being said, nice to have it happen here. All right, we'll get into a little bit more what was going on with this lineup. We'll get a little Trendon Watford talk. We'll talk about how just some more pieces of this game. We'll get all to that here in a second. First, gonna head on over to our friends over at FanDuel. We get in the action, NFL, NBA with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers are grabbing $5. If you bet $5, you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. And it didn't happen yesterday. We've been on the Nets with the points every single time. They're -3. Couldn't believe it. We're still willing to do it. We weren't able to cover -1. They just won by 1. That's okay. It's okay. Our friends on FanDuel still got us covered here going forward. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, in the NBA, all in one place. You get a hunch in the middle of the game. You check out the latest stats. You view the live play-by-play. So much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 real money bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, so as we roll along on today's Locked On Nets episode, 116, 115 winners. Doug mentioned at the top, now 1-1 inside of the cup. You go and look at that group, and you're going to see some pretty sizable plus numbers there at the top of the division with the Magic and the Knicks, both 2-0. And we talked about it yesterday going into this game. That's why you wanted that Friday night game against the Knicks so bad, because this would be total chaos in the group stage now. But back inside of this game, beyond the 34 points for Cameron Johnson, beyond the Ben Simmons game, which, I mean, as you say, if you can do it again, just do it a second time and do it a third time and do it 2 to 3 times over the course of a 7-game week and multiple games for this team. It'll be certainly interesting to watch. Then you have the Trendon Watford coming off the bench, who was the only player that was a positive in terms of plus minus. +8 off the bench is 19 minutes, 3 of 6, 4 of 5 going to the free throw line. But more than anything, we talk about the 2 blocks too, gave you 10 points. It was the back back-to-back possessions where they were feeding him in the post. And Watford, as we've talked about in the past with him, he has kind of this chaotic energy, which, by the way, had a spinning move into the lane that led to a bucket at one point that felt very, on brand for him. He set himself up, back down smaller defenders, and then when they swapped out and put a bigger body on him, he was still able to be effective, get fouled, and go to the line in those situations too. You needed a spark late in this game, and Watford, boom, on cue, was able to come through in that moment, excuse me.
Yeah, they just don't have a ton of guys who just are super aggressive on the offensive end, right? Without Cam Thomas in the game, they have Schroeder. We mentioned Cam Johnson is able to do it. I mean, Simmons obviously a little bit here, but usually not. They just need someone to press on defenders a little bit, right? And not just be floor spacing 3-and-D kind of guys. We've seen a couple guys try at times. The DFS will try every once in a while to tackle closeout. Zaire Williams will try. He's taken a couple mid-range jumpers too. But mostly they just don't really have guys like this. Watford is one of these few archetypes where it's you can try. He has enough just sort of control in the post that he can finish around the basket. He can draw fouls. He can shoot threes. So you have to be able to just, you have to be able to guard him out there a little bit. He only shot 1 in this game, but we saw last year that he has the ability to at least do it. So if he's going to get 6 shots off the bench plus another 5 at the line, which was the second highest on the team, and end up closing the game, I mean, there was a reason we mentioned them and talked about him at length on the podcast yesterday. It's just the Nets kind of just need this guy, right? If he's going to come in and close for Simmons, because you're not as worried about the foul shots late in the game as you are, him getting fouled or whatever. Simmons just doesn't close a ton of these games. I don't know if Simmons is also just maybe on a soft, soft minute cap still, right? He just doesn't really play tons of minutes, only 26 in this one, even though he was having a good game. I just think we're going to see more and more of him, Watford, that is, going forward, just because just because the Nets can just kind of put him in any situation and probably not worry about it too much, right? He's going to be able to fit with almost every other guy they have on the team. And he's a fun player to watch, right? A little out of control at times, we'll take it. A little, exploring the studio space, we'll take it. I just think that overall, they just don't have anyone else like him on the team. And I think I always like that in a player. I always like when there's just a guy that you really can't put in a box, but it all kind of works. The sum of the parts is just, greater than the whole or whatever. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts or something, whatever that saying is. That's whatever that saying is. If you said it correctly, that's what Watford is to me.
And you're right though. I mean, because there's some sense of, and all these guys are the best athletes in the world, so it's no knock, but there's some sense of you need a guy that has irrational confidence. And Trendon Watford, he's only been back for 1 game. It's second game back on the court. His minutes restrictions, as he said in the post game, they told me 18. I played. He looks over, he goes 1903. So pretty good, feeling good. But he just goes out there and has an attitude that, well, of course you're going to give me the ball in and around the basket. Of course I'm going to knock down some of these critical shots when we need them most. And it's interesting to think about a little bit the dynamic under Jordi Fernandez as far as how these rotations go, because not to belabor the Ben Simmons point, you need Noah Clowney is still developing. More often than not, you're not seeing him in the closing lineups. You're still going with some veterans. But Ben Simmons, even in having a good game, and I'm not trying to drag him, you also know that you don't want to utilize him down the stretch, because then you're going to get to that foul trouble. He's going to go to the line. He's adverse to taking and making those shots. So to be able to, in this game, with no Nicholas Claxton as well, with still no Daron Sharp, go, okay, we still need to be physical. And I don't know if we're going to start feeding Dorian Finney-Smith, who's been way better now from the outside, right? So many things have gone back on the upswing here for the Nets. There's no one else to rely on to play some physical basketball around the basket that is athletic enough to go and finish at the rim as well. So I don't know what Trendon Watford's long-term value is going to be this roster, but in the short term, it's always fun to see these players just kind of step right in and go, yeah, okay, as one of our off-pod phrases, okay, my turn now, right? And just take over the game and take over the ball as if it's a part of the natural order of things for a guy that's primarily been a bench player in the league.
That's one of our favorite sayings around our house too, is whenever we see someone do something that they're not supposed to, we say, oh, we're all on the same team, but it's my turn now. Right.
We're all you need a little bit of that energy, right?
Hey, look, we're all on the same team, but right now and for a little while, it's going to be my turn to do the thing. I think I agree. That's great. I do agree with you that, because it's funny too. The Nets came into this game. He was playing center. The Nets are so undermanned right now in terms of just traditional NBA stuff. Simmons started at the 5, and their backup center is Trendon Watford. And their backup is Dorian Finney-Smith. Those are their centers right now. Any functional NBA team would never really be winning this way unless that guy's Draymond Green, right? And then you have Steph Curry with him. Like, these are the situations those things can work. Most other times, it's like, oh, if you're going to be playing super undermanned at center, it better be Zion. Otherwise, like, you're just going to be in trouble. That's why you see these other teams just be able to kind of live without it. I mean, there's other examples, but you kind of get what I mean. The Nets are just not playing aren't playing with that kind of just personnel. So when Watford's your backup center, or DFS is your center, or Ben Simmons is your center, you kind of do need to have everything clicking, and you have to have some guys that are just willing to just say, F it, like, I don't really care. This is what's going to happen, and we're just going to try to get to the basket here. We're going to put our head down and try to get there, because, pace and space. Well, then they don't even have pace because they play the slowest pace in the league. But theoretically, pace and space and those things can work up to a point. But it's not like the Nets are running and gunning, right? They are kind of slow and methodical, but they run a system that Watford fits perfectly in. They run like pistol action, double drag action, dribble handoff stuff, screen set a screen, and then try to get either a shooter open or start moving the ball around. Like, one person takes a dribble, then it's a kick, then it's another pass. Like, that's kind of the system they run. When you run that DHO pistol kind of mashup, there's a few other elements that are going into what they're running, but Watford fits in perfectly there because he can set the screen. He can dribble handoff. He can roll around. Like, he can pop out for a shot if he needs to, and he can try to get to the basket. It just kind of works. And it's just so funny. No one, by the way, name another podcast in the world that's talked this much about Trendon Watford. He should just come on the show. Like, there's no one else doing this kind of hot Trendon Watford talk on a daily basis. We're just one of the few out there.
And it's also a game, by the way, because we mentioned 10 points for Watford off the bench, but it is a game where all 5 starters were in double digits. And even though, I want to get into an interesting development that we've seen over the course of the season when it comes to Jalen Wilson here too. But the other player out of that double-digit scoring effort was Dennis Schroeder, who, when you mention only 5 assists for Ben Simmons, you'll take the shots, but is it one or the other? Well, it's probably because you have Dennis Schroeder giving you 12 assists, and you also got 4 from Johnson in his performance. You got 3 from Dorian Finney-Smith. And it's really just, when you look through that starting 5, outside of Jalen Wilson, second-year man who got inserted in this game, it's all the veteran players. Like, whether you want to call the cup a big deal or not, when you get into a game that you really want to win, you want the best foot forward, and we've even seen this all year long anyway under Jordy, it's still about, hey, who are the guys I can rely on the most? And so far, we've seen these players come back to their averages, and in a lot of cases, like Johnson, exceed them. Coming up here in a second, I do have a question about Jalen Wilson and how he started in the backcourt alongside Dennis Schroeder. Let's get into positionless basketball here coming up to close things out in just one moment.
Before we get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Look, Prize Picks made daily fantasy so easy. All you're doing on Prize Picks is you're going more or less on the Prize Picks projections. You're not wrangling with salaries. You're not going against sharks in the water. You're just going more or less on those Prize Picks projections. And they're the projections you love. It's the points, the rebounds, the blocks, the assists, the steals. That's for the NBA. Get it going with the NFL too. Touchdowns, rushing yards, passing yards. It's all there. Go more or less. You can win up to 4 times. You can win up to 100 times your money with few as 4 correct picks. I knew I swapped those numbers. We're going to do 100 picks in 4 times. No. 100 times with 4 picks. Go to Prize Picks right now. The aforementioned Draymond Green, did not realize this when I mentioned him before. You can go more on the 22.5 points plus rebounds plus assists tonight. I think I'm going to take the more on that one on our friends over on Prize Picks. Look, they made it so easy. Sign up today. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. They get the weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday. We'll take that. We love tacos. Prize Picks just got you in mind when they're putting all of this stuff together. Right now, you're going to download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right, so as we tie a nice little bow onto the Locked On Nets episode, Brooklyn gets the W. They improved to 6-9 now on the season. I think we're in the 15 to 16% mark. So we'll go ahead over the next couple of days and start to take a temperature of where we think this team is headed as far as some of the value for these players. But this is also a rare game. I mentioned Watford being +8 in his 19 minutes. Everybody else off the bench was massive negatives here. Zaire Williams, he was 2 for 5 from the field. There's things beyond the box score with any of these guys, but Clowney only plays 14 minutes. Shake Milton played 18, I don't know what we want to call them, kind of minutes. And then you had Keon Johnson as well. But this was So with all the injuries, no Cam Thomas, no Nick Claxton, this actually felt like one of the first times too when Jordy Fernandez was like, I might kind of, once you see the team gets back into it, might want to kind of win this one. I'm going to run long with most of my veterans outside of Jalen Wilson. 34 minutes, 6 of 13, 5 of 8 from beyond the arc in this one, gives you 17 points inserted into the starting lineup. And he was inserted, as I said before, as the backcourt mate to Dennis Schroeder. I get the I ultimately get the value, because you look at Cameron Johnson and Jalen Wilson sharing the floor together and what that can mean from a shooting perspective. And they were on the court together a ton in this game. Reset right back to it to start the third quarter. Spent a lot of time on the floor together in the fourth. You have to when you're playing these big minutes. But I've been really impressed with how Jalen Wilson has not only improved his game and looks more consistent, but the things he's trying to do on the offensive end. He got swallowed up a couple of times in last night's game, but he's the only young player besides Thomas here that Fernandez has shown a real confidence in to put into some big minute spots. Way more play for him early in the season than we maybe anticipated coming in.
Yeah, total steal of the draft. I mean, like from 2 years ago, just no doubt about it. Like if he's a second round pick, late second round pick, that's already starting and holding his own at this point. Came in older, obviously, and that's like one of the reasons that he slipped a little bit in the draft. Didn't have like super great ratables, but still, it's like one of these things where it's like, hey, if you're really good in college for 4 years, you can probably make it here to some level, right? If you're really good in college in a big conference or conference player of the year, you can probably do something on the NBA court, right? And so I wasn't actually, when I saw Cam was out, we do this. I do this every night. So I was like trying to quickly make a projection of who I thought was going to start. This is who I thought would start. I thought Jalen Wilson would start because he kind of like projects the closest that they have is like sort of like to have enough size at the 2 to be able to shoot a little bit. Like it's hard to throw Shake and start him next to Dennis Schroeder. It's hard to, you're way too small if you have Keon Johnson and Dennis Schroeder out there. So I thought it was going to be either him or Zaire. But I thought it'd be Wilson just for like a little bit more offensive punch, right? Like they probably at that point don't need a ton more defense. They just need a little bit more in terms of shooting and maybe a guy who shows willingness every once in a while to try to get to the rim, which he does, right? Like it's not all the time, but he will try to get shots at the rim up every once in a while or try to get to the basket. So it's just an impressive, like it's just a Marks win here for the draft to be able to get a guy. Is he going to be an all-star? No. But is he an NBA rotation player that you can spot start here on a team like the Nets? Yeah, for sure. 100%. And we've seen this. We saw this early on last year. I think we knew kind of right away that he was going to be able to stick. Obviously, he crushes Summer League MVP. He'll always have that one to, tell his grandkids about. And then just be able to get out there and play 34 minutes of high-level basketball at this point is really all you can ask for guys like this. So wasn't surprised to see him get the start. Think that he's just a good player. Like he'll stick around the league, I think like 4 or 5, 6 years, something like that, which by the way, for a second round pick is awesome. Like that's a really very impressive thing to happen. And I don't know. I like watching him play. So not surprised to see him play well. Not surprised to see him start.
And ironically, remember Cam Johnson was also a player that came out older coming out of college as well. It's why he's already closer to 30 than not after being in the league for 5, 6 years now. So good game for Jalen Wilson. Good season overall for him. The last notes really here to get into are just that the concerns around Dorian Finney-Smith, and we don't know whether or not he'll have the trade value that anyone, including Sean Marks, is hoping for, but it's at least a good sign that he's gotten his three-point shot back here over these last handful of games. The weekend against the Knicks, 4 of 6, 4 of 7, 4 of 5 again last night to go along with some free throws there. And then the rebounds and the assist numbers. Like, this is honestly, if I told you that over the last 3 games, Dorian Finney-Smith is averaging 15 points, averaging 3 assists, averaging 4 rebounds, and knocking down, 65% from beyond the arc. This is the best that we've seen him play over a very small stretch since coming into this team. We always talk about timing. Hopefully he can sustain this as long as possible, because it does all come back to with Cam Johnson as well. What is it going to look like when the buzz starts? And I think you've done a good job of saying, I don't think other teams care about the ups and downs necessarily in the individual play or in the individual box.
No, I think they care about the downs. I think they care about the downs. Like, I think, I don't know if they care
how low
so much
or the
about
lows is a concern.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think that they would really care about the downs. If it was like 24% from 3, I think that would be meaningful. I think if the fact that he's at 43% now, doesn't necessarily rate, which is crazy. That's great. And by the way, some of these threes are not easy. Like he's taking like quick trigger threes at times, DFS, right? They're not all just stand in the corner, wait till you're wide open and shoot a three. This is above the break stuff. He's taking a couple dead on ones. Like they're not exactly, they have a higher degree of difficulty than just your stand around the corner and maybe someone will pass it to me and I'll shoot a three. Like that's not what's really happening for here. I don't think shooting 43% like gets you a first round pick, but at least gets you back into the discussion of like not washed, let's say, right? Or something like that. Because I think there's a world where he is on the age curve and just having been around a while, if he was shooting 25% from three right now, we'd be like, it's over. Like they'll never get anything. They'll never get anything. Now, at least with it's functional and looks good, now we're back into the, I can maybe see it happen. I don't think it's a first round pick. I don't think it's anything like that, but at least it's doable. I think there was a world where the bottom could have fallen out and we're like, he's just going to be on the team and he's picking up the player option next year. Right. And something like that. Like, I think we're maybe probably out of that conversation, but so anyway, just to go back to the original thing, I don't think they ride the waves of the highs and lows. But if you had to choose, you'd much rather it be high, obviously, because the lows would actually have a material difference.
Yeah, and specifically to Dorian Finney-Smith, I think you're right in that, even Cam Johnson, I think his seasons look so much different than maybe we anticipated because he looks more active on the offensive end. It's more than just a perimeter shot for him. But I also think that he's viewed in a different way by other teams. Now, contracts are always going to be a different talking point around it. With Dorian Finney-Smith, the age is just right, where you are talking about, oh, wait, is this guy on the wrong side of it now? Are we going to trade anything for this player and have him come in and say, yeah, I just don't have the lift anymore from the outside. Also, I've lost that step defensively, so I can't really switch. I'm not going to be as versatile as you want me to be.
Sorry, one more thing. That's not very quick. That's not the case either. He's been very good on defense this year.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it's actually the all-around game.
He took that Tatum assignment. He's fighting over screens. Like he's doing all those little things.
So we did this actually. I don't know if it was last season. It was last season early on where this was an episode of the podcast. Doug came in and he goes, trade Dorian Finney-Smith right now. Trade him now. It'll never be better. And by the way, it was never better. And it's not a knock on Dorian. It never got better because he was hitting everything from beyond the sun. He was playing amazing. And it was trade him right now while everyone would be interested. The Nets didn't do it. Now it's this year. And I feel like we are knocking on that door again of, hey, if somebody calls, and yeah, maybe you'd like to keep the good vibes going all the way to the deadline if you're Brooklyn with these veterans. But if somebody calls you in the next week about Dorian Finney-Smith and says, hey, we love what we're seeing, we want him now, not later, you say now is the time to take Dorian Finney-Smith, because I don't think you're going to get these extended stretches like this consistently from him because of his age and because of the team, the role, and everything else.
So funny you said that, because when Adam talks, I usually just doing something else in the background, and I'm literally writing. Yeah. I've look. We got our 10,000 hours into talking to each other. I know what Adam's going to say. I was literally writing a tweet that's like posting Cam Johnson and DFS's splits, right, or especially 3-pointing splits right now, and we're just like the headline: trade these guys now. Right, like it's just there. So
when we record the podcast, because you can see it in tandem over on social media.
Yeah, if you ever see me looking down, it's me just crafting something that I want to put out there because of something we're talking about here. Okay, we're gonna get out of here. Much appreciate everyone rocking with us through a net season, which I got to say is significantly more entertaining than I think any of our wildest dreams would have been. I mean, the fact that the record is what it is now, that they're in every single game, it's a lot of fun. They are holding up their end of the bargain. We're holding up the end of the bargain too, 5 days a week. Make sure you subscribe over Locked On Nets, wherever you listen to podcasts, over on YouTube as well.
This quote comes from yours truly. Cameron Johnson and Jalen Wilson are a plus 8.96 this season across 169 minutes shared on the court. Go ahead. Tell him how great this poet is.
Well, yesterday, I think it was one day this week that we gave a poet that I couldn't believe. Who was? Oh, Aaron Boone. Okay, yeah, never mind. All right, so we'll counteract this. This is a couple that these are very shaky. These are very, very shaky all-time great poets. All right, one of the all-time great poets. We're back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Yeah.